has a lot of IP issues.
I have no idea who we hear is talking right now.
So they
Now we
stopped.
don't, but I have no idea what that was. Anyway, good morning, everybody from Rye, New York. This is Danny Cherry here again, and we are very excited today. We are excited every day. We are excited people, but especially today because we have with us two very, very successful entrepreneurs that built very impressive companies. And I'll introduce both of them. So first of all, I'll start with you, Ron. Ron Ferber graduated University of Michigan class of '86, launched Homemedics in 1988, and became and made it the largest health and wellness retail brand in the United States, with offices throughout the world. Over the course of his 27 years of leadership, Ron developed thousands of innovative products, with over 150 granted patents and over 120 trips to Asia, generating annual revenues of $700 million at its peak. Ron left Homemedics in 2015 and assumed the role of CEO of Wellsense, that was founded in Israel with offices in Neve Ilan, which of course, we will talk about all of that shortly. Now, Ron Poliakine, how do I begin? Where do I begin? So Ron is one of the most successful entrepreneurs in the Israeli tech ecosystem. There's no other way to put it. It's funny because when I was building our UAE event with my good friend Adiv Baruch, who's the head of the Export Institute in Israel, the first name that he said, we want to talk about technology, we need Ron. And then here we are a month later. And we didn't know about one another. So it's like, small world. Or I'm very fortunate. So just a couple of words about what Ron has accomplished to do here. So he's an entrepreneur who combines business-focused innovation with social impact initiatives, leveraging advanced technology to create companies and solutions that address real human pain points and healthcare needs. He's the chairman and CEO of Nanox, which develops imaging system combining lightweight and affordable imaging machine based on X-ray source technology with cloud-based infrastructure. He's also, and I believe, I'm not sure if it's written here, the last time I checked, it's traded at $1.5 billion. Now, where was I? Ron is also the co-founder of Musashi AI, a joint venture with Japanese Auto Parts. Other enterprises founded by Mr. Poliakine include PowerMet, a wireless power solution, Illumigine, which develops a non-invasive, high-resolution endoscope for pelvic exams, aiming to revolutionize women's health, and of course, Wellsense, a solution for eliminating pressure ulcers. Mr. Poliakine studied arts and design at the Bezalel Academy of Arts in Jerusalem and currently lives in Mozai Elit with his wife and 5 children. Ron, this is the first time I hear you have 5 children, because when I was looking for a house in the US and you go to those websites and you write that you have 5 kids and you need 5 rooms, they're like, come on. No, and you can't be serious. Here in the US, we don't have 5 kids. And basically the houses I was looking for was from 140 to 3. The minute I pressed the number of rooms we need. So very impressive. I'm not alone. So first of all, good morning and good evening for you. I mean, Ron, you're in Israel. Ron, you're in Chicago? Michigan, yeah. So how are you guys doing? How is life? How is COVID around you?
Go ahead, Ronnie.
Well, it's later for you. You've gone through the day. I have the whole day to mess things up. So why don't you tell them about you today?
Sure. So I think a very exciting time. I'm sitting here in our innovation campus in Neve Ilan, outside of Jerusalem. Israel is pretty much open. I think, Danny, you're coming soon to Israel. You'll see that we're pretty much behaving as we're over the COVID-19 hurdle. So business is open, engineers are working, we're open. totally. We've learned a lot during the COVID period, especially in the healthcare domain. The idea of conducting remote diagnostic over the cloud or the internet, and also the ability to do a full roadshow with Zoom, which was unheard of just before. One of our companies went public with a full roadshow in 3 days over Zoom, which is part of the good things about COVID. Overall, very happy to be here with you today.
Yeah, over here in the United States, in Michigan, everything here is great. I mean, I would assume most of the people on the call today are in the United States. I mean, you know, when COVID first hit for us, being in the hospital world, everything was basically shut down. You couldn't even communicate with anybody, but things are opening up quite well. And we're fortunate because the product that we've developed actually is very useful in this environment. It's useful without COVID, but even in a COVID environment, it's that much more useful. So, you know, everything's great here. Business is coming back to normal. I actually was in Israel last week. I managed to get in. I almost managed to not get out, but I did get out. So happy to be here this morning.
Great, great. So thank you for that. And you'll be soon explaining what you guys are all about and what you guys are doing. And I think what I would like to do before that is share a video that I've seen that you shared with me about what you guys do that I think would be a great opener. So let me start with that. And we'll continue right after that, after this.
Every year, 40,000 Americans die in car accidents. At the same time, 50% more people, 60,000 Americans, die from complications caused by pressure injuries. Many of these pressure injuries are developed in the hospital ICU, where a multitude of patient conditions create the optimal environment for the formation of pressure injuries. ICUs have the highest nurse-to-patient ratio, stringent turning protocols, and the most advanced support surfaces. They also have the highest rate of hospital-acquired pressure injuries. Pressure injuries account for 27% of all hospital-acquired conditions, 45% of hack-related deaths, and cost hospitals millions of dollars each year. ICUs are challenged by pressure injuries because caregivers can't see and measure pressure, the root cause of pressure injuries. While monitors exist for assessing our most critical organs, our largest organ, the skin, remains unprotected. Introducing View from Wellsense, the latest breakthrough in pressure injury prevention. The View's Smart Matrix Pressure Sensing Mat continuously detects and measures patient pressure and transmits the data in real time to the interactive monitor. Pressure is effectively offloaded and pressure injuries are avoided. Wellsense's technology has been published in numerous articles in peer-reviewed journals. An independent meta-analysis conducted by Johns Hopkins concluded that the use of Wellsense technology reduces the risk of pressure injuries by 88%. The View system is delivering dramatic results at many prominent facilities, with PI reductions at or near 100%. Nurses appreciate the View's visual guidance and ease of use and can finally leave their patient's bedside knowing that they effectively offloaded pressure. A 2019 published study estimated that annually, the average 160-bed hospital faces nearly $6 million in financial risk, 911 days added to the length of stay, and 16.4 deaths. Pressure injuries are a huge and costly problem for most hospitals, and the human toll is immeasurable. The Wellsense View delivers unparalleled prevention, and we guarantee results. Please join us in our mission.
Great. So that's a great, I believe, opener, and we have a lot of interesting stories to share later on about you know, how you ended up with Ron and how it all started. But maybe we will start with you know, explaining a little bit more, and we take it from there.
Sure, sure. Can you see the screen here?
Perfect.
Awesome. Well, again, welcome everybody. You just saw the video. Hopefully it gives you a nice overview, but let me start with the amazing fact that you have In the United States, 50% more people are dying from pressure injuries than from car accidents, right? It's literally a silent killer. And for me, it's the reason why I dedicated my professional career to its eradication. It was a visit with a dear elderly cousin that really changed the course of my professional career. Imagine a man who, alongside his wife, miraculously survived the Holocaust, literally, as we know, dodging bullets, only to find himself suffering from what was an entirely preventable condition of pressure injuries. And, you know, here's what pressure injuries are. Pressure injuries are wounds of varying stages that are caused by pressure, and they range from very slight redness all the way to an open wound to the bone. You have 2.5 million Americans are suffering from pressure injuries each year, and the pain and suffering is really beyond comprehension. Most of us have had firsthand experience with pressure ulcers, whether it's a family member, somebody in the mishpacha, a friend, and we can appreciate and understand the immense human toll. And from a financial perspective, it's the single biggest liability for hospitals. Hospitals are literally hemorrhaging money because of pressure injuries. Whether you're looking at the costs within the facilities, the legal expenses they're forced to absorb, or the financial penalties that are levied upon them. In fact, most people are not aware, but Medicare actually penalizes hospitals for every pressure injury that they're forced to report. Medicare actually takes the bottom 25% of hospitals against what they call HACs, hospital acquired conditions, and they deduct from those hospitals a 1% penalty right off the top, and then an additional 2% if the patient returns to the hospital readmitted within 30 days. And there are many HACs, even more than what's on the screen here. But with all of these HACs, pressure injuries alone account for more than 25% of all the incidents, all the HACs, and almost half of the deaths. Okay, I mean, it's an astounding number, and it's even more significant when you take into account that of all the conditions, it's really the only condition that continues to grow within hospitals. Every other condition, the hospitals have been able to reduce. Now, nowhere is the problem more serious than in the hospital ICU. Despite significant investments, a lot of money that's spent in processes and equipment, regular turning, the most expensive and the best beds, the highest paid nurses, as many as 25%, 1 in 4 patients within an ICU is susceptible to pressure injuries. And this is, my friends, this is totally, totally unacceptable. And the reason that this has failed is because if you can't see the problem, if you can't see the pressure, there's no way to eliminate it, right? And this, my friends, you see on the right of the screen here, is your first glimpse of what our system delivers. Clear, color-coded imagery that immediately identifies areas of high pressure. And that's where our revolutionary view system comes in. With our view system, we've created the world's first and only advanced patient visualization system. The system is comprised of our US-made Smart Matrix mat that's collecting data, and it's transmitting the data to our proprietary monitor with our custom user interface. The device itself, the system, is a Class 1 approved device, and it delivers functionality well beyond just simple imagery and monitoring. The system was developed from the ground up, and this is really important to understand. This system was developed by my team and I, and the team in Israel, side by side with what I refer to as the soldiers in the field, the nurses. Their input was crucial in ensuring that the finished system delivers on what they need, not what somebody in a boardroom or someplace else thinks that they need. The system provides a full view of the patient's pressure condition, which is taking into account not just what you see in the present, but also what happened immediately before the nurse entered the room, and most importantly, what is the nurse doing in terms of the future to make sure that the problem, because the nurse is only in the room for a few minutes. So we actually have an onboard training tool that trains the nurses to prevent pressure injuries. And my friends, this is precisely what we have proven already clinically at the highest possible levels. The absolute peak of the mountain in terms of clinical efficacy would be our Johns Hopkins, I say it's ours, it's independent, the independent Johns Hopkins meta-analysis that looked at all the articles published over 11 years, 1,866 individual articles discussing, purporting to prevent or reduce pressure ulcers. And of 1,866 articles, only 2 met the criteria for meta-analysis. And for those of you who are within the sciences, you can understand the importance of this achievement, right? So we've also been added to the standards of the worldwide organization that really oversees pressure injuries. And as I always say, you have to have the clinical. So as significant as the results are, nothing beats actual performance in the hospital. We're not here speaking with you today about some theoretical idea that we have. We're talking about we're in hospitals where the war is being fought, okay? We started shipping our system, we started shipping our system in the Q1 of 2019. And we started actually with the heart hospital. We have the entire heart hospital over at Ohio State University. And we've expanded to many other really world-renowned institutions, Hopkins, University of California, Irvine, and in all cases, we're delivering prevention at or near 100%. And with the passing of time, we've made significant inroads with really amazing momentum with many new hospitals that are coming on board, okay, with most of these being, again, top institutions in their region of the country, right? So what you see here is an updated list as of yesterday of what we have our current customers on the left that you've seen mentioned. On the right are the ones that you saw in yellow that I say that they're in process. We're expected to close within the coming half year. Now, the reason that we're seeing this type of growth in demand isn't rocket science. It isn't that we have the best salespeople or the best sales pitch. It's because the hospitals are hemorrhaging money, and they have no existing solution until now, okay? And when we look at the many costs, when looking at the many cost centers that are affected by pressure ulcers and pressure injuries, you see a lot of people focus on treatment costs, but there are many other areas that are impacted immediately that have a significant cost to the hospitals. And the savings I put down over here, they're minimally 15-to-1 ROI for a hospital in terms of prevention, right? And we're able to deliver these savings while at the same time we're generating a level of profitability with our product that really have to be in the pharmaceutical industry to see these types of, 70, 80 margins, net margins. And when we're looking at where we go with our system, we're talking about primarily the ICU environment and I look at things in terms of 10% penetration. You can see over here, just in the ICU, generating approximately $140 million in gross revenues at a 10% ICU bed penetration. And then when we go into the OR environment, where 20% of the pressure injuries that you actually get in the ICU are happening, the financial picture here is pretty much the same at a 10% penetration level. You have $100 million in revenues, but again, you have that same high level of net profitability. So everything discussed thus far is within the hospital environment, OR, ER, ICU, but there are huge business opportunities outside of the hospital as well, including the nursing homes, children's hospitals, home care. These are industries that have their own unique challenges. and requirements, which we will create proprietary solutions to extend our domination into those areas. And while competitors do exist, none have been able to successfully penetrate the hospital environment due to severe limitations in what their technology is able to deliver. And while we have numerous patents and patents pending, and we continue to file on new and innovative claims, we continue to lead the category through innovation and innovation alone. As an example, we just finished the development of this. It's an incredible engineering feat with combined our teams in Israel and the United States to create what this is a laser engraved construction. It will revolutionize the manufacturing process. It'll have significant cost impact. It'll deliver added features that we can't even deliver right now, and will have very, very strong patent protection. And this really, my friends, leads us to where we are today. When I took the job of CEO of the company 6 years ago, I basically outlined 6 requirements based on my experience that I felt we needed to hit in order to be in a position where we could, reach that type of hockey stick type of growth. And I'll go over these individually. And this is the one slide I'd like to go over a little bit more detail. So first of all, we've achieved clinical validation. We've discussed the meta-analysis. We have many other published studies as well. We validated our performance. We're at hospitals seeing pressure injury reductions at or near 100%. Our model of business where there's an upfront cost with the service component each year thereafter, what we call razors and blades business recurring revenue, we've delivered that. Basically, all of our customers opt for going into the second year at a high cost, $6,000 per system. It's a lot of money. We have proven through customers like Tampa, OSU, no hospital at this early stage wants to just give you 50 or 100 beds, ICU beds. They tell you, show me, like Missouri, show me state. They tell you, show me, and we expand. We're seeing expansion, right? It's very important to expand within the hospitals before looking for growth outside of the hospital. Now, we are seeing the system expansion. The perfect example is Prisma system in South Carolina. It's the largest system in South Carolina. Spent an hour on the phone a couple days ago with the CEOs of all the hospitals. They're already in 2 of the hospitals. Will be spread to all the hospitals within the system. Okay, I think what I consider to be the highest validation right now. All of the customers that we've gained, with the exception of the University of North Carolina, and now we have another customer as well that's coming in at West Kendall in Miami, where they did not. Most customers, every customer required some type of a trial evaluation where we had to go in, we had to install the product. In the case of University of North Carolina, they just spoke to another hospital. They spoke to UCI, they spoke to Hopkins, they spoke to the people. They don't care what I say because I'm selling, right? But they spoke to the hospitals, and the bottom line is we've been able to achieve that level. And here is what the next 4 year looks like from a financial standpoint. By the end of this year, we'll break even for sure, 100%. And with the necessary investment into critical areas of the business, we'll reach our goal of 10%, modest 10% penetration by 2024. And that's why we're raising $20 million to fuel the companies towards and even past the 10% goal. I welcome you to join myself, my team, Ron, in delivering on the mission that I embarked on the day that I visited my cousin, Mark Finder. Thank you. That's Denny, that's the end of the presentation. So I'm gonna disconnect from the presentation and the mic is yours.
Thank you. And indeed, as I've mentioned before, we get great companies here, different opportunities, but I think it's very, you don't see too often 2 very, very accomplished people behind a cause that is, is also very important. And helps people. I mean, any one of us, unfortunately, probably knows somebody who had something like that. My mother, I remember when they used to turn her from side to side, for instance. So it's something that, you know, people suffer from, and you're right. It's just like, you know, when the nurse comes in, she just turns you the other side, hoping that you didn't turn yourself somehow, or that somebody else didn't turn you. And you know, they just do it. It's a very technical thing without understanding really. You know, they don't have the information of really what's the problem. So, you know, and again, as a group, family office group like ours, that always thought we see ourselves as very tech oriented, coming out of Israel originally. You know, I think one of the most interesting things about us is that we can bring people like you that really are top entrepreneurs and share their stories that normally you don't get to hear, and that's exciting. So first of all, thank you very much for your presentation, and I want to ask, I have some couple of questions, of course, that I have here for us. So first of all, you know, if you could share, how did you guys meet? I would love to hear, maybe Ron, you can share with us how that happened.
Yeah, it's a great story. I mean, I was running Homedics. Again, it's a company that I was basically the president, one of the co-owners. And we were doing, you know, a huge amount of business in the United States. And one of our largest customers was Bed Bath & Beyond. And there was a gentleman there who was overseeing all of the buying. His name is Art Stark. Very involved. I think he was the president of the Friends of the IDF, very involved in Israel. And he calls me, he says, do me a favor. There's this guy. I met him for a few minutes. The guy is incredible. You got to meet this guy. He's coming in. He's got some technology. I didn't know Ron at all. I didn't know anything about what he was bringing in. But what he brought in, incredibly enough, for those on the phone, I mean, almost everybody's phone today is wirelessly charged. You can put it on a pad. Ron and his team in Israel actually were the ones to bring wireless charging to the world. I mean, you know, I'm not saying that he's taking credit for Tesla, but what he had technology, not in product form. And he brought this technology, and I basically took his idea and I turned it into a product. And we launched the business. I remember we were sitting in a kosher restaurant in New York City, because one of the shareholders was a kosher, and the World Series was on, and our commercial comes up for the first time. And you know, it was amazing. It was a huge hit. And we ended up selling that business to Duracell. They wanted the business more than we wanted the business, and so we sold it. But that was how we met.
Yeah, and I believe the founder of Beds and Beyond, isn't he a big supporter of Israel? I remember and invest in technology, right? I mean, I remember I was once, I think, was introduced to him at some point.
Yeah.
Well, interesting. And a little bit about you know, healthcare trends that you're seeing. That's a question for Ron. And Ron, you've been in this space for a while. I would assume, from what I'm seeing around, that COVID helped basically everybody who was in healthcare. Obviously, not in every space, but definitely it became a very strong investment segment. But I would love to hear your thoughts about what the trends you're seeing and all of that.
Yeah, well, I think, Danny, indeed, COVID has some impact to the healthcare environment. Let's start with COVID. I mean, COVID is a terrible thing. And what we've seen, that many of the investment performed came from what we call hope investors. People are looking for hope. And people are willing actually to listen to stories that are bigger than life, that will provide some hope given where we are. And that's something that is very, I think, interesting that we've seen. And even if you look at some of the recent transactions in healthcare on the public market, you'll see that a lot of the investors actually are willing, not like before, to take a leap of faith in the name of hope, given the healthcare situation through COVID. So that's one thing. The second thing I would say is that things were accelerated. Trends that already started and before really accelerated. For instance, I mean, I'm sure you know that many of the telecommunication companies, such as AT&T, SK Telecom, SoftBank, etc., they're all finding themselves migrating into the healthcare simply because IT is IT. And information technology is information technology, regardless if we're talking about emails or EMR, I mean, different HIPAA compliance, etc. But basically what we've seen that many of the giant telecommunication companies actually accelerated their moves into healthcare. And I think that's a trend that we're going to continue to see because everybody realized today that IT, information technology, is pretty much plugged into healthcare of the future. And that's, as you know, I think totally different than what we've seen 10 years before when you had the IT companies for healthcare and then IT companies for telecommunication. And that's definitely accelerated. The third thing that I would tell you that people realize that we're very vulnerable and what's happening in China can impact the US or Africa or Israel. And in that sense, we are very flat globe. And that really encourages, I think, a lot of activities that are beyond, developed countries. And we'll see more and more initiatives going to developing countries simply to accommodate the fact that what's happening in one country can impact a different one. And to do that, you need sometimes to separate, I would say, the patient from the diagnostic. So what we see in digital healthcare is, and that's something that is very much prime time, I believe right now, we see more and more businesses that are creating a marketplace between physicians and patients, regardless of the origin of those people. And that's something that I believe is part of the future. And we've been fortunate, Ron and myself, actually being involved in companies that actually providing both the hope, but also the architecture that enable remote diagnostic that is crossing borders between patient and physicians. So that's pretty much the trend that I've seen happening in the last year, and I believe it's going to get stronger and stronger.
Very interesting. Maybe for you, Ron, how I asked also in general how COVID impacted the businesses, and what I see from my end when I'm speaking to healthcare companies and thought leaders and technologies, but if you can maybe talk about that a little bit more.
Yeah, what's great is we're both Ron, so you can never get it wrong, right?
Yeah.
So I'll speak. I mean, Ron is, you can clearly see he's a visionary and he sees from a higher level. The lot that Hashem gave me in life is to be more on the ground and more granular in terms of product and everything. What I've seen in our business at Wellsense, I have to be honest. So the first 6 months it was very scary because it wouldn't matter. You could have literally had the cure to cancer. Every person in the hospital, from the CNO, people, office workers, everybody became a soldier in the hospital. You had nobody to talk to. There was nothing. So whatever business that we accomplished, we accomplished once the 6 months passed. And what we've seen is really a paradigm shift, which is very, very positive. Let's put aside the fact for the moment that as significant as our system is, for just regular no COVID environment, it's so much more impactful in a COVID environment, and I'll explain to you why. First of all, the first problem that occurred with COVID was there was a shortage in PPE, personal protection equipment. So what happens is you can imagine that if a nurse has to turn, it's usually two, because the average person in the United States is heavy to obese, the average patient. You need two nurses to go into an ICU room every 2 hours. Can you imagine how much you have to change the PPE? You can't cross-contaminate. So from a PPE savings perspective, crazy. The impact of our device where you can go in, because you're not turning. Turning doesn't eliminate pressure. Turning just moves pressure. When you have the ability to see where the pressure is, you may have to only go in the room maybe once every 3 hours or 4 hours. Right? So it is a huge change in that. The next thing is that, and I know because one of the key members on our board is a senior level person over at Vizient. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with Vizient, it's the largest GPO, group purchasing organization in the United States. And we're very fortunate to have him on the board because he puts me in touch with the top hospitals, of the hospitals throughout the country. What I can tell you is he told me back about 7 months ago, they had a 40,000 nurse shortage. So again, when you look at a system like ours, the ability to maybe eliminate pressure just simply by changing the head of the bed, just 10 degrees, put a pillow under the person's elbow. It's a complete paradigm shift. You use maybe 30-40% less nurse time. The third variable, which is really the one that speaks the most, is that they realized, whoever the genius was, they realized that instead of putting people on machines, if you laid them on their stomach, which is called the prone position, that it's actually better than the machine, and people are able to heal. Now the problem is that nurses never deal with people. It's very rare to put somebody on their stomach, and so all of a sudden people started getting pressure injuries on their face, their shoulders, their knees, and so our device is really the only device that allows the nurse to see where the pressure is, offload the pressure, and resolve that situation. So when you take that and then you combine it with the fact that these Zoom calls, these Teams calls, where I can get, I go visit a hospital, the main person's not there. They had some emergency. When it's a Zoom call, it's a different thing. You get people are there, you get their attention. It's created tremendous efficiencies, So it's been, unfortunately, it's bad for people, but it's been good for our business and I think for the medical industry as a whole.
And just so we understand exactly how it works and the different objectives of different groups, who's really buying the product at the end of the day? It's the hospital that's buying the product?
Yeah, the hospital is buying the product. You have to have, usually you have people, whether it's a CFO, whether it's a director of quality and safety. You have to remember that most hospitals are working on a shoestring budget. Grocery stores work on a higher margin, right? So when they get hit with something like, I ran through the presentation rather quickly. So you have 87% of lawsuits on pressure injuries, the hospital is losing an average of $1 million per lawsuit. You got a 1% penalty that we spoke about. These basically wipe out the profitability of the hospital. So for them, when they're looking at this thing, this is something that they absolutely require. And what they're doing now, you mentioned your cousin or whoever it was, turning people doesn't eliminate the problem, it just moves the problem. Our system is really the only system that's capable of resolving the issue in a COVID environment, not in a COVID environment. And that's what makes it an amazing opportunity at this time.
And so your clientele is really hospitals, nursing homes.
Quality. You got to have financial people, because we learned very early on that it's like you can run through forever. If you just deal with the clinical people, you'll achieve. You climb the mountain, Mount Everest, you'll realize you have to go all the way down and climb K2, which is the financial mountain. So every time we have a call today, it's always the people that I mentioned: chief nursing officer, director of quality, safety, CFO. These are people that they understand what the cost impact is of the system, because unfortunately, my friends, hospitals don't treat patients based on, Rahmanis. There's got to be some financial component to it, and we deliver a huge financial component for them.
And by the way, do you see a difference probably between the different markets? I mean, in the US, you need to pay to get a good service. In other places in the world, the government, right, subsidizes most of it, right? Like, I think in Israel, like in the Nordic countries.
No, but I think the key point to pay attention to is that we came with a SaaS model. And I think that's one of the trends in healthcare that we did not really focus on, but it's already happening. I think governments or hospitals are reluctant, I think, to spend capital spending, and they much prefer to have to work with a SaaS model, which is software as a service. And I think that's a key component of our approach that is very much appealing in the US to different customers, but also in other countries. whether the customer will be government or not, it's still they know how to pay for software. Again, IT took over government, right? So every government have a huge Microsoft agreement or what have you, and they know how to pay for service licensing, and that's really, I think, the unfair advantage, I think, in the business model that we brought to play, and in that sense, it's unified between countries the way we see it.
So a couple of more questions before we'll see some questions that I see were being asked here. And this one is for you, Mr. Poliakine. You see, Mr. Ferber, I solved the wrong challenge. Talk a little bit about Israel and the US. We've talked about it before when you and I spoke first, but I would love to see your vision here.
Yeah, obviously, listen, I'm an Israeli, so I will share, from where I stand, I'll share my point of view. And, it's interesting because the guy that introduced me to ArcStark is a gentleman by the name of Malcolm Hoenlein, which is a very famous Jewish leader who happened to sit as an investor and board member on few of our companies. And, from time to time, we were talking about the state of Israel and business, etc. And I came to him with the following theory. I said, listen, it's very, very easy to understand that we have many challenges, the state of Israel, and there are so many people that actually want us to be gone. And the only way we can stay vivid is by keeping relevancy. Now, what is relevancy for the state of Israel? And I think, since Israel is so small, you need to think about what is going to be lacking in the world. So, in 50 years, you're not going to have enough food or water in the world. That's a fact. In 50 years, I think healthcare is going to transform and people will live way, way longer. And you have a lot of people that will require personalized medicine, what we call. Cyber is a big, big concern. And obviously energy is something that renewable energy, especially following Biden's announcement, I think is a big thing. So if we want to be relevant, and because if we'll be relevant, my Israeli thinking, our enemies will not be so easy to kill us, basically, right? So as a state of Israel, let's focus on the thing that the world needs. And we are very good at that because we are very good in innovation. And I think once you've done this, the next question is, how do you scale it? And I think no better place than the US to scale because the US representing a very, very interesting market for any technology, from healthcare to food. And that's really the way I see the link connected very, very well. I also think that in the US, you find a lot of institutional investors and family offices that actually can have a long view. And for this, I think we need a long view. So that's why the investment community and what you're doing is very much relevant to what Israel and the US can do. And of course, the go-to-market partnership, very, very simple example of what Ron and myself are doing is really combining technology and go-to-market strengths in order to provide a solution that after we focus first in ICUs in the US, what we're doing right now is actually scale it up to other countries. And that's something that can be a model for many other of our companies and other Israeli companies. So in a nutshell, I think that Israel is a startup nation. We need to focus on things that the world needs, and we need to utilize our great friends in the US to scale it up, test the water, get the investment needed in order to be successful, and then really provide a solution beyond the US, because also I believe for the US, it will become very, very important to impact in a positive way other countries. So that's really the way we think about it. I cannot tell you that Malcolm Hoenlein was exactly on board with me on this one, but anyway, it was a fun conversation at that time that I believe it's still relevant.
So, and my last question before we'll see what some folks here are asking. So you've done amazing things throughout your career. I mean, it's really phenomenal. Very few Israeli entrepreneurs have that history. What are you most interested in these days?
Well, I think as you go, you get a little bit older. I think you realize that you're as good as your health, and I think health is something that have a common ground across territories. So I'm very much interested in healthcare these days. I do want to make, and I believe we can make an impact in a way that will ease people's life, will create accessibility and affordability for medical services for people around the world. We call it democratization of medical services. I do believe that with technology, you can reach out to so many people, so many more people in so many more countries in a way that, will impact their lifestyle and healthcare. And that's really what my inner vision, my inner goal is. And I think I'm doing it pretty well. I mean, if you look at Wellsense, this is a classic example. And let me just end up by telling all of you how I started the company. So I was actually taking a flight from New York to London, and I read someplace that Medicare is going to penalize, exactly what Ron said before, hospitals for what they call never event, or things that are preventable. And I was amazed, shocked actually, to see that 60,000 Americans are dying every year from complication of pressure ulcers. And the only protocols to treat it was really to flip the patient from side to side. And when I came back to Israel, I told my friend that is from Talpiot, Amir, is my technology partner. I told him, listen, it doesn't make any sense. Let's find technology because we can save 60,000 people in the US alone every year. And of course, he told me, like any technology, it's impossible. And 1 week later, he came with something that was the beginning of what then Ronnie took to a product that is now impacting every night. I mean, what I tell Ronnie, every night tonight, when we go to sleep, we need to know that many, many people in ICU units in the US are going to sleep and they are safer because they're utilizing this technology. And that's really the biggest satisfaction that anyone can have. We had this problem, idea, solution, and now we execute it to the level that, you know, the simple patient in ICU units tonight can sleep better without the risk of pressure ulcers. I think this is a very big satisfaction, and that's really what is fulfilling my heart and my my day this days.
Amazing. I mean, I think after accomplishing on both of you are companies that are worth so much, and I can understand why you would focus on what you think will actually do a good impact and not about another, just another investment or another company. So that's very interesting. I want to ask, I see some questions here. Do the nurses need to undergo special training? And if so, is it complicated? Sounds to me like it's not that complicated.
Yeah, I mean, so part of our service is that when we go into a hospital, we actually, and it depends on the number of beds they have, but we usually take over ICUs entirely, whether it's 1 or 2 or 3. So we have what we call clinical specialists, CSs, that are employed by us. They're full-time employees. And when the hospital is paying for the service, annual service, part of the service that they're getting, which is included the first year, is training. Training is key. What I would tell you is that I could probably turn anybody on this call into a subject matter expert, within probably a couple of weeks. First of all, it's very simple, the way that the system works. I mean, you're using color the same way as a weather map. So there's training. There's always going to be ongoing training because there's always a new nurse that's hired. But it's nothing that we haven't been able to. And again, the performance speaks for itself. I mean, we're performing and delivering the results we are with the training that we're providing. So it's a great question, and fortunately we're able to handle it, and it's quite simple.
Someone is asking about target markets, Europe, Asia. What about these guys? I would probably add the UAE, for instance. I would assume that a very wealthy place like the UAE would want to invest in the health of, in the well-being of its citizens, and without a heartbeat would probably implement something like this.
Yeah, so I have a very strong position on international markets. In the old days, I say people won wars with machine guns. Today, they win wars with sniper rifles. And in the old days, companies would try to be successful and judge their success on how widely they spread. For me, I fight a war. I want to fight. I don't want to fight. I want to fight one war. I don't want to fight multiple wars. I can look at ICU. I can look at nursing homes. I can look at England. I can look here. If I'm going to look everywhere, I'm going to be good nowhere. I want to be the heavyweight champion of the world in the most important market. which is the United States, which I am going to be. I'm already proving it. We have really no competition. And my definition of success, you want to export success. Exporting something doesn't create success. Having something successful that you export is what creates international success. So there's no doubt that the same people that are suffering and dying from pressure injuries in Japan, England, Swaziland, they all will have this device. We will become the standard of care in the industry and in the world for the skin. We have heart, we have, all types of machines, x-rays, and we have all kinds of things. This is it's really a paradigm shift, what we're going to deliver, and it will go everywhere, but we want to make sure we do it the right way.
Someone is asking about competition. You mentioned there's nothing quite like this. I wonder why. Something that's been people have been suffering from forever.
Yeah.
And what's the closest competition, I guess, that's out there?
Well, the problem is the focus is in the wrong place. So the focus of most of the competitors is somebody decided many years ago that if you turn a patient, it's better than the patient not being turned, which is true. If somebody just left it slide. The problem with turning is that at the end of the day, there's a reason why 85% of the pressure ulcers just happen in the sacral region in the lower back. It's because people, when you turn somebody, usually the back is still in contact. So turning people does not eliminate pressure injuries. So once you understand that turning doesn't eliminate pressure injuries, then everybody that creates a solution that has to do with turning, how often is the nurse turning? Is it a good turn? It's a dead end, right? Because turning in and of itself doesn't solve the problem. So that's the primary reason why what happens. And when I talk about competition, I'm talking about what we see in hospitals. We have the competitors, and I'm happy to Danny, you'll have a copy as a PDF of the presentation. I actually named the technology, I named the competitor, but you do not see them in the hospital for a variety of reasons. They're just not able. And remember something, to be successful in a hospital, you have to have two things. The graveyard is full of amazing medical creations that never got anywhere. You have to have a tool that delivers, and you have to have the soldier who's operating the tool, the nurse, has to enjoy it, easy to use, duplicate the usage every day. And so we deliver on both of those things. And so if something's not in the hospital, it's usually because it didn't work or it was not adopted by the people that need to use it.
How many hospitals you're working with right now, and how many do you think you will be in the next 12 months or so?
Yeah, I mean, I had it on the list. I only had basically what's through maybe the next 6 months. I mean, I think we have 15 or 16 hospitals right now. I actually have it on paper over here. We roughly have about 15, 16 hospitals, but I mean, it's very, very exciting. One of the hospitals in particular has the largest medical center in the world, which is Memorial Hermann down in Houston. And we're undergoing in June, we're going to be doing it in 3 different hospitals, an evaluation in 3 different hospitals. And I mean, they alone, the numbers are staggering. But I focus on, let's do the evaluation, let's get it done the right way. But we're expanding into Cedars-Sinai, Brooks Medical, Army, University of San Francisco, University of California, San Francisco. So, it's really, really a great thing, because what's happening now is we have enough friction that the hospital's actually calling, the other hospitals to see what's going on. So it's really, we're right where we need to be to really go through the explosive growth with the plan, with Ron's involvement, and really taking the company to an IPO, probably sometime in the next 12 months is where we're positioning ourselves to go.
Very nice. Someone's writing, very interesting presentation, gentlemen. You see, he didn't go into the run challenge here. Did you notice any increase in number of pressure injuries following the pandemic? Any correlation? And then as somebody else is asking, how do you explain the dramatic increase in cases in recent years?
Okay, so I mean, first of all, with COVID, everything went up. Even places like Johns Hopkins that never see, I mean, they're never on the hack list. actually no hospital in the state of Maryland. I think when you're around a champion, even if you're a lesser hospital, you have to be that good just to get patients. So even they experience a record number of pressure injuries. And again, it was really primarily because of prone patients, patients that are laying, on their belly that are getting pressure injuries. What was the second part of the question? I'm sorry, Denny.
I can take, Ronnie. The second one.
Please.
How can we explain the recent increase in the recent year? And that's a very interesting question because, and this is something that that I like as if you want to understand technology, and I'm coming from technology. I mean, basically there are airbeds and there are all kinds of improved beds that's supposed to reduce the pressure injuries. However, there are more pressure injuries every year. So the question is why? And the answer might be that the caregivers depending too much on the technology to do the job for them. And that's very interesting because our system is actually giving a tool to the caregiver to take measures, okay? So patient caregiver, type of a relationship rather than technology. And the sad fact is that technology on its own cannot fix the problem. And all these fancy technologies or beds actually did not proven to reduce the number of pressure ulcers. However, when we brought with something that the caregiver can see and take action, the magic occurs. And that's something very interesting to tell you that even with the best technology, sometimes you need a human touch in order to perform the right action.
I think this is about the questions we have so far. I saw some people came with ideas and suggestions. We will send the contact information tomorrow to everybody. So anything else that you would like to add at this point? Anyone?
Well, I'm going to let Ron close. Look, I appreciate everybody's time. Like I said, I got into this business. I'll just end with a little bit of a story. So Ron and I were already very, very close friends. We actually were in Nepal together. We had a lot of good times together when we were building the Power Mat, the wireless charging business. And so literally within 2 weeks after I visited my cousin in Framingham, Massachusetts, Ron didn't know anything about my cousin, nothing. He didn't know about my visit. And he calls me up and he says to me, I read this thing, we're developing this thing. Are you interested in investing? I said, what is it in? He says, it's in pressure ulcers. And I got to tell you, people use the word basheret when they talk about, who you're supposed to marry or whatever it's meant to be. But that was an indication to me, and I was running a business where I had really great years for myself personally, and it was a family business. But it was one of those times in your life where you just realize that everything that you've ever done in your life professionally actually brought you to the point where this is the right thing. This is where my future is. And so I became an investor, and ultimately I took the role of CEO. So, I'm kind of end with that story. Ron, please.
Well, I think I just want to thank you, Danny, for the time today. I think it's a pleasure to introduce to all these interesting people. I just see the list here. Just want to mention from investment point of view that we do believe that we got to the tipping point. We have technologies that is validated both from technological point of view, clinical point of view, financial point of view. We have a track record for this business that gives us with the top hospitals in the US today. And I do believe that the hockey stick effect is just in front of us. So in that context, I would like to welcome anyone that is interested to join us as we're going to expand our business and hopefully provide a very, very nice return to investors. So that's really what we call in Hebrew, kol koreh, to anyone that is interested to look into it. It's a very serious opportunity that I'm sure will become a huge company while doing a good thing for the world.
And MIC, you're asking for a deck. If you would, first of all, you will get the information of everybody tomorrow. And I'm sending you my email here as well. If you want to send me, I'll introduce you to Ron's, to the Rons here, and they could send you all the information you need. So just send us an email or No, just send me an email. Actually, but basically that's all you can do. And I want to say I see. Okay, all these guys. Are you sending me all the questions right now when I'm doing my closing thing? That I mean to keep me distracted. It's hard for me to phrase a sentence as it is. So I'm just getting people starting to come with help and ideas. Great. I mean, we will. I will forward everything to Mr. Ferber and your suggestions to help, and we'll send you all the information. I want to say that next week we're staying with Israel on May 11th, which is Tuesday. I have a conversation about the Israeli economy and the challenges and where it's going with Professor Leo Leiderman. For those of you who does or don't know, he's the Tom Cruise of economists in Israel. He's like, you don't get higher than him. He's a good friend. And Miki Blumenthal, which is a partner at Grant Thornton in Israel, and Tila and I, who's the founder of BDI in Israel. They're all very known names. You see Ron is familiar with all of them, I'm sure. And then the next day on May 12, right? I'm right, which is a Wednesday, we do our conference in person at the World Trade Center with some very, very big names like Larry Silverstein and many families whose names I cannot pronounce, but I will try, like Gina Diaz-Barroso from the Achraga family, which is one of the largest families in Latin America, definitely in Mexico, but they own the largest Latin American telecommunication network group that's traded here in New York, Grupo Tele something. I don't have it in front of me. And I hope they don't hear this because they will just cancel on me when they hear that I don't. Dupont family, did I say it correctly? Every time I say a French name, people remind me how I don't do it right. His Excellency Abdallah Shaheen, that's easy for me, the General Counsel of the UAE, and many, many more families. That's happening next week at the rooftop of the World Trade Center. So I would like to thank everybody for being with us. Be rest assured that we will be able to get Ron and Ron. They don't know it yet, but we will get them to speak at our in-person events around the world. There's so much that's going to be happening. We got loads of stuff coming after the summer in Miami. By the way, we do our conferences only where it's fun to go and have fun and run away from the cold in New York.
You're there, it's fun. What are you talking about?
So Miami and Art Basel, our conference right before Art Basel, where everybody here freezes. We got Dallas coming up, we got London coming up after the summer, and Canada. Unfortunately, it's going to take a little bit longer for them to get out of COVID. So we're doing an online conference after the summer, and we are in person in Q2. So, and November, what am I talking about? The UAE. First, we are the first, by the way, even though we are from Israel, I work for the US entity, which makes us the first US family office group to do something in the UAE. And it's not something, it's a major event. And I hope you'll meet both Rons at the Ron and Run at our conference there. So thank you for being here. We'll send you all the information later on. Thank you very much for your time, and we'll keep you updated.
Thank you.
I don't know what that means, but we'll do that. So thank you. Stay safe, everybody, and Ron, enjoy your weekend. We're coming soon after you, but you are already there.
Thank you.